So anyone can explain to me what is the rule relating to strict liability? In which cases a person can be held liable with strict liability?
In strict liability cases, mens rea is optional. For example, in cases of implementation, for like in the previous case, we see
Tushar,
about
speak slowly and loudly. There's some background noise in your background.
yes, ma'am. Strict liability is where mens rea is optional. For example, in the
No,
last case,
you're not clear. I cannot hear you clearly. Will anybody else try? Tushar can try again.
Ma'am, strict liability, I read it in the thoughts. Like, I will say what I know. Strict liability
Okay.
is like vicarious liability. There is three essential things. Like there must be a dangerous thing. The dangerous thing must be escaped, and it must produce some dangerous to other persons who don't own that. So this is Reliance versus Fletcher in the Torch case. I read this strict liability. So the burden is with the defendant whenever the strict liability is imposed. There
Okay,
must
Ma'am,
Rahul, one
may I?
thing. Just one
Ma'am,
second. Let me respond to Rahul. Rahul, the strict liability and vicarious liability are not the same thing. Strict liability is on the same person who has done the act. Vicarious liability was on the person who has not done it, but he or she has been held liable for act of somebody else. That's one. Secondly, the point which you've said about strict liability in tort are okay, but that's not what we are talking about. We are talking about strict liability in criminal law. Ravi
ma'am,
Raj has
is
written
or
in strict liability. Just one second. Ravi Raj has written in strict liability there is no mens rea. We can't see mens rea. That's true, but in what cases? Because what we need to understand is that the sections which are silent on the requirement of mens rea, whether in all those cases does it mean the liability is strict or not? That's what the question is. And we
ma'am,
need
may
an
I?
answer on that. Yes, Mohammed Shakib.
Ma'am, when we see that mens rea is not there and the purpose of the law, the statute is frustrated, and we see it in a larger perspective. Say, for instance, say we saw the case. So the law itself, the purpose, the rationale behind the law has to be served, and mens rea is not a essential thing. So the law should not be frustrated. That is the principle for strict liability.
Yeah, whether exclusion of mens rea will facilitate implementation of the law. If the section is silent, then it is by reference to this test that we determine whether the liability will be strict or will it require proof of mens rea. In Mayor Hans George, we know that the person had no intention to commit the offense. He was unaware, and certainly the plea is not about the defense in this case is not based on the question of that he did not know the law, because we know ignorance of law is not an excuse. But the argument was based on the principle of criminal liability of mens rea, that no person can be held liable unless this person had a guilty mind. So this man, because of the absence of not because of the ignorance of law, had no intention to commit the law. So if he had no intention to commit the law, commit the offense, whether the liability will still arise. So the judges have evolved the principle, the test, saying that in all cases where the section is silent, so we're talking about, we said there are three possibilities. One, where mens rea is mentioned, then there's no question of asking anything else. You have to determine that state of mind. The second case is where the statute by specific words exclude the requirement of mens rea. The ambiguity is only in those circumstances where the section is silent. Neither it provides for mens rea, nor does it provide for exclusion of mens rea. So it is in such cases that we have to give the answer by reference to the test whether exclusion of mens rea will promote the purpose of the legislation, facilitate the implementation of the legislation, and whether its inclusion will frustrate the purpose. So, okay, clear? Any doubts? Yes, no, maybe? Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Clear to everybody else? No doubt. Great. So it's all clear. Now let's look at Narayan's case. So tell me, what are the facts of Narayan Singh's case?
Ma'am, may I?
Yes, Rahul?
Ma'am, the case verdict, the name is State of Madhya Pradesh vs. Narayan Singh.
Mhm.
There are two cases. The appeal was made in the Supreme Court against the trial magistrate conviction, trial magistrate's declarance of judgment. So the case here is, there are two cases. The first one is there is a lorry driver and two cleaners. And there is another case also, both of them like same. So the another case is a lorry driver and a coolie. So the first one, the lorry driver and two cleaners carried 200 bags of fertilizers from Indore to Maharashtra, and they were interrupted at Shenwa sales tax barrier, which was in Madhya Pradesh itself. That is 8 kilometers from the Maharashtra border, which was in a border. So the another one is also like that. The second case, a lorry driver and a coolie who was carrying 170 bags of fertilizer, they also interrupted at the same sales tax barrier, which is located in Shenwa. So that is also the same barrier, which is 8 miles away from the Maharashtra. So they were charged under the fertilizer movement FMC order, with 3 and 7 of the Essential Commodities Act, which is telling that the carriage or export of the fertilizer is a crime. So in both the cases, the trial magistrate observed that the prosecution failed to prove that the accused were attempting to export the fertilizers. So the trial magistrate acquitted the accused. So the state appealed in the High Court. They tried to appeal actually under the CRPC 378(3), but the High Court declined the grant to leave. So the state appealed in requested a grant in the Supreme Court. So this was the
Under the special leave petition.
Yes, ma'am.
That's a very good narration. So one, just a little clarification, that export of fertilizer was not prohibited, but export of fertilizer was prohibited without a license. The lorry drivers were not found to carry the required license, the permission to export. So therefore the same question, and the lorry driver said that we do not know, we have the paper, this is what the papers have been given to us. So we do not know what papers are there, what papers are not there, that we do not know that we do not have the right kind of paper. So we do have the papers. So the papers they had were mentioning where it was going, from where it was going, what was there. They had the receipt, etc. also, but they did not have the clearance from the competent authority. So then the same issue is there. And remember, in this one, they were charged with what offense? Attempt to export.
Export the fertilizer.
Attempt to export, because there are two offenses. One is export of the fertilizer, the other is attempt to export. In this case, the charge was attempt to export the fertilizer. And the defense said, we did not know, we cannot be imposed liability. And the magistrate also said that the prosecution has not proved that they had the necessary intention to, they were doing it voluntarily, they had the intention to export. They are poor, the driver, they do not know what papers required. So they had no intention to export, to violate the law. And therefore, the magistrate What is the level of the court? Who was the court which acquitted? He is the,
Trial magistrate.
does it say trial magistrate? Yeah, it says, so there's a magistrate. So it did not go to the sessions. From there, because of the acquittal, the state of Maharashtra went in appeal to the High Court, and I think that is very rightly pointed out. The High Court did not allow the appeal. And then they have come in special leave. The High Court declined them the leave, and they have come in special leave. So do you remember the article which permits special leave petition to the Supreme Court?
136.
136.
136.
So these are important thing that in this matter, when you were looking at the earlier matter, which was the court which looked at the first round in Mayor Hans George? No, in Mayor Hans George,
Presidency.
which was the first
Presidency. Magistrate.
presidency. That was also magistrate, no? No, we do not know. Presidency court is said. So whether it was a sessions level or it was a magisterial level, we are not very sure on that one. In this one, we very categorically know that it is a magisterial court where it went. And there is no mention that from the magisterial court, it went to the sessions court. It has gone straight to the High Court, which did not permit, and the matter has come to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court has, what is the decision of the court in this case?
The Supreme Court stated that the trial magistrate come to an error. So they told that we don't give an offense because we don't give an punishment because it was 15 years from the judgment of trial magistrate when he acquitted. So the Supreme Court told that they committed the offense, but we cannot give any punishment due to.
Yeah, so Supreme Court convicted,
Yes,
though it refused to give any punishment to the person concerned. What were the issues before the Supreme Court? When we say what are the issues, we mean to ask what are the questions which the Supreme Court has addressed.
There was two questions. First was that intention should be considered or not in this case, as the High Court or the trial court said that it was unintentional, as the as the lorry driver doesn't know about the lorry driver said that I was unaware of the fact or unaware of the law. So they were having bills and others. So court said, first is the intention. Do they have the intention? And second point was.
No, the question was, no, if you have a slightly modification there, the question was whether they can be held liable without there being any mens rea. The judge did not ask whether they had the mens rea or not. The judge said, okay, they didn't have any mens rea. But the question in strict liability cases is whether they can be held liable without the mens rea. So that's first issue, perfect. Second issue.
Is there any attempt to export the fertilizer?
Whether they can be held liable for attempt to commit an offense. And we will learn that there are 4 stages in commission of an offense. First is intention. Second is preparation. Third is action towards commission of the offense. And fourth one will be commission of the offense itself. Yeah, so attempt to commit an offense. So ordinarily, it is at the stage of attempt that liability attracts. Till the age of preparation, excepting in conspiracy cases, preparation itself is not. So we'll come to that. First, let's understand what is it that the judges have said on the first issue. First issue is, can they be held liable despite the fact that they have no mens rea? What are the reasons given by the judge? Because the judge has said, yes, they will be held liable. So what are the reasons given by the judge in this case for saying they are liable?
I mean, in this section, there is whether knowingly, intentionally, or otherwise. So the otherwise can be reason to maybe liable for the intention. Unintentional also held liable.
Yeah, you're referring to the right thing, but what we need to say is that what was the law before? What was the amendment introduced? Because under the earlier law, There is a Supreme Court judgment of Nathulal. So why does Nathulal does not hold good anymore? That's where the whole discussion is. Because after Nathulal's judgment, the state brought an amendment in the law. And what did the amendment provide? We need to look at the specific clause there. So it said, so initially we had in the said order, this is the order. And then,
Ma'am, the 1967 amendment.
yeah, what was the clause which was added?
Section 10C1 was
Yeah, 10C1. Where is the language given?
Can I read?
Yes, please. Tell us which para, which page you are reading.
It's on page number 26, 10C1.
Okay.
If in any prosecution for any offense under this act which require a culpable mental state on the part of the accused, the court shall presume the existence of such mental state, but it shall be a defense for the accused to prove the fact that he had no such mental state with respect to the act charged as an offense in that prosecution.
But there was another one, no, which is knowingly.
Yeah, they added three
culpable
words.
mental
Ma'am,
state
that is
includes
7.
Knowingly, intentionally,
intention,
or
motive,
otherwise.
knowledge.
Ma'am,
Ah,
that
the
is
previous
section
one.
7+1.
Yeah, 7. Amended whereby the words whether knowingly, intentionally, or otherwise, but introduced in 1967. And they were deleted, and the material part of 7.1 was restored to its original frame. And a new provision in section 10 of the Act were added, which read as under. 10C1 we have just read. Explanation said, in this section, culpable mental state includes intention, motive, knowledge of a fact, and the belief in or reason to believe a fact. So this is saying that okay, what is the import of these changes? One is that when the first amendment was made, it categorically said whether it is knowingly, intentionally, or otherwise. So that means that the section clearly was falling in the second category of the mens rea categories, whereas mens rea was specifically excluded. What change has been brought? Just 1 second. Sorry about this. The import of the difference between the two. The first one was very specifically excluding. But in the second amendment, presumption has been created. Presumption means that the prosecution doesn't have no presumption against the accused. So in this case, the lorry driver will be assumed that he had the guilty mind, the mens rea required. But he has the option of adducing evidence that the state of mind cannot be imputed on him. So when we create a presumption, okay, so we go back to our earlier discussion where we learned that the burden to prove state of mind and actus reus and whatever are the ingredients of the offense, that is on the prosecution. But in some cases, law lays down the presumption of mens rea against the accused person. it is presumed in dowry harassment, in cruelty to married women, dowry death, lots of examples are there where the law creates that if this thing happens in these circumstances, it will be presumed that it has been done with the necessary mens rea by such and such person. If a woman dies unnatural death within 7 years of her marriage, it is presumed, and there was harassment for dowry, it is presumed that it is the husband and his relatives which are responsible. But these presumptions can be rebutted, which means that the defense can create a doubt that maybe it wasn't so. So the difference between the two, that in this case, a presumption has been created. Then anything happened after this presumption was created? Or what was the law in action? And remember, in all these cases where amendments have taken place, you have to look at the date of the amendment and date of the action. Only that punishment on that criminal law can be applied to an accused person, which was in existence on the date of the commission of the act. If it has become favorable, and suppose procedural changes have taken place, and those procedural changes are favorable to the accused person, then judges grant, we call it the retrospective implementation of a law. Ordinarily, the law applies from the date of its coming into force, the day it has been declared to come in force. There are two things also you should know. When an amendment is passed, a legislation is passed, we know if it's a central legislation, it has to be passed by both houses of parliament. Then it receives the assent of the president. On receiving the assent of the president, it becomes the law in the country. But it still does not come into force. It comes into force ordinarily, unless it says otherwise, and it doesn't happen. Ordinarily, there will be two scenarios. It will come into force, it will be implemented only when it is published in the official gazette. Or the legislation, when it is published in the official gazette, mentions a date. The legislation itself says it will come into force on such and such date. So if an action taken place prior to the date of the amendment or change or the enforcement of the law, that will not be decided by reference to this law, even if the case is pending. So the amendment has come in force here. Amendment was made in 1963. Which year was that? 67. So if the action has happened before that, this amendment will, so whatever is the law on force, that will be applicable to determine what is the liability. We need to look at, then there were further amendments in 1974. The ordinance was replaced by Amending Act of 1974. Effect of this is that the statute is that presumption of guilty mind on part of accused would arise, and it would be open to the accused to rebut the same, as the law now stands in any prosecution under the Act which requires a culpable mental state on the part of the accused. The same must be presumed unless the accused proves that he had no such mental state with respect of the offense for which he is tried. Now, according to the explanation, 10C1, we have read this already, intention, motive, knowledge of fact, reason to believe, and the actual belief, all that are included. The degree of proof expected to rebut the presumption has been indicated in subsection 2, which says that a fact will be said to be proved only if it exists beyond reasonable doubt, and it will not be sufficient to prove its existence by preponderance of probability. Thus the burden of proof lies heavily on the accused to rebut the statutory presumption and the degree of proof expected that required for the proof of a fact by the prosecution. Therefore, then there can be no doubt that the aforesaid legislative changes have reversed the thrust of the decision in Supreme Court in Nathulal, and the same no longer holds good. Then they have come back to 7. So when is the offense in this case? Which date this action happened? Know what is the date?
1974.
12 to 1974 and 30/10/1973.
Yeah, so all of them are post amendment. So therefore, what we need to look at is the position as it existed on that offense. So we are not concerned. And Nathulal, which year was Nathulal decided? 1966. So after 1966, amendments have taken place. So that's another thing to learn. Many a times students don't pay attention to these details. They'll say, oh, there's a Supreme Court judgment. So yes, there is a Supreme Court judgment, Nathulal, which goes in favor of the accused person in this case. And maybe this was the reason why the trial magistrate looked at that judgment and said, Supreme Court judgment, we acquit, because the earlier position was said that mens rea has to be proved. But after the amendment, Nathulal judgment no more holds good. So learning, the lesson we need to learn is that when we are looking at the decisions and the law, you have to compare and contrast the dates. So even though there's a Supreme Court judgment, in Article 144 says that law declared by Supreme Court is law of the land. But the legislature can make the changes in that judge-made law by making amendments in the law. So then whatever is the latest position may be that the Supreme Court has changed the language of the law, or the Supreme Court decision has been changed by the language of the law. Either way, whatever is the later binding authority, that is the one we need to refer to in determining. So in this case, Nathulal is not a good law for our purpose. What is the good law in this case? जी
मैम, जैसे विशाखा गाइडलाइंस सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने दी थी, तो अगर उसको सुपरसीड करने के लिए पार्लियामेंट मैम उसके खिलाफ कोई कानून बना सकती है या ऑलरेडी है कुछ ऐसा? तो मैम कौन सा लॉ है?
विशाखा में जो गाइडलाइन दी थी, they remain the law since till 2012. In that year, we got the Sexual Harassment Protection of Women Act. So that is now the law which applies. So whatever was said in Vishakha was the law till the legislature, and they themselves, as the Supreme Court itself has said, that these will be the law till the time legislature makes the law. So the moment legislature makes a law, then it is the law made by the legislature which will apply. Another example of that is recent past Nalsa judgment. So Nalsa judgment came where the Supreme Court recognized the rights of the third gender, the trans people. And they have laid down various directions, etc. After that, they said this is what the government should do, and these are what the directions are we are giving. So subsequent to that, now we have got a Transgender Persons Act. Transgender Person Act contains certain provisions which are not in accordance with the Nalsa judgment. But it is the law, statutory law as it stands today, that will prevail. In all cases of supersession, we need to look at whether, this you might have considered in your Hindu law, your family law classes also. So the traditional Hindu law has been modified into many respects by the these four legislations we have referred to as the Hindu code. Initially there were one code, then four legislations. So the matters which have been dealt with by the subsequent legislations of the traditional Hindu law, they will stand modified. But if there are areas which have not been talked about, they still remain. So the co-partnership law, for example, till the amendment in 2005, the co-partnership law continued to be governing. This is from the old Hindu law. Co-partnership was not part of a succession act. So to the extent of co-partnership, where only male descendants up to 4 generations were co-partners, that law survived even though there was a Hindu Succession Act. Similarly, Supreme Court judgments.
What are co-partnership laws? What are co-partnership laws?
You will read this next semester in your family law. Co-partners are, now women can also be co-partners. So joint Hindu family consists of men and women, but the males in those families constituted what we refer to as a co-partnership. And there are rules for
So it
that.
is
Who are the members
related
of
with the
Kopasnas?
division of the land. The father gives the land to the sons and daughter and divide
Yeah,
that.
but no, in the Kopasnari, it was ancestral land which passed from son to son. Women were not part of it. To some extent,
ma'am-
changes were made, and women were made successor to one Kopasnas property, not to the whole property. But they were not the Kopasnas themselves. Now we have the law 2005 when they have also been made Kopasnas. You will read all this in your second semester family law too. So
Okay,
the
ma'am.
example I was giving was the context I was mentioning is in the context that the parts of the old law, whether it is Supreme Court judgment or any other law, only that parts get modified which has been addressed in the new law. So everything which has been not addressed will still remain. So in case of Sexual Harassment Act, the aspects of whatever were the range of aspects covered in Vishakha guideline, they've all been legislated upon. So now Vishakha guideline will not hold ground for doing things under those guidelines. Now one has to look at the statutory law. So that's the important. So when we are looking at what is the binding law at any point of time, we have to look at what is the latest legal position. In criminal law, always, there might be some exception. When we say always, this is always subject to exception. So laws, the general principle of laws is, and especially in criminal law, that they are applied prospectively. If I did not know on the date of my commission of the act that it is an offense, but it was made an offense at a subsequent date, then I cannot be held liable. So in this case, this question is not arising. In this case, the question had arisen that there was a Supreme Court judgment, earlier Supreme Court judgment, and then there is a change in the law. So the judges are emphasizing that it is a change law, it is the latest law as amended by different ordinances, that the latest position, that will govern. So what is the law, what was the legal provision in force on the date on which this offense was committed, that will determine. And that law categorically said there is a presumption. So the other thing which I thought was relevant for us was that when a presumption is created, then what is the burden of proof on the accused person? In this one, they were saying that the burden of proof is to prove beyond reasonable doubt and not on probability of consequences. So here they have come back to Section 7 as it was defined, explained in Swastik Oil Industry. Do we have the date for the decision of this judgment?
Ma'am, it's 1978.
1966.
1978. So this is a post-decision explanation. So between the two judgments, one judgment is from 1966, Nathu, and then we have a 1978 decision. So which judgment will guide us? It will be the later judgment. And later judgment which has come, and also when we look at later judgment, we also, because the whole lawyering skill is to identify which is the law which governs my field, which law applies. And you will find that there are multiple options possible. So one principle is that the latter law prevails. But in the latter law also, there might be a situation, and you will, perhaps you are reading this, or you will be reading the doctrine of precedent. What constitutes precedent? So generally we say Supreme Court judgment is a precedent. Now we've got two Supreme Court judgments, one of 66, one of 78. Which one of them is a precedent? So for cases, for incidents occurring prior to 66, the 66 judgment will determine the law as applied in the 66 judgment. Then the incident has, in our case, has happened in 73, 74. So this will be the law as applicable on that date and the decision deciding the matter on the subsequent date. So the one incident is of 73. Amendment took place in which year? 74. So between 73 and 74, there are slight change in the position. 73, the earlier section was applicable, which said intentionally, knowingly, or otherwise. And then 74, we have the other one as well. So now, whether both of them have got a similar impact in terms of the position of mens rea. Burden of proof is a secondary level question. The first one is whether the liability for exporting the fertilizer without the necessary permission amounts to an offense or not. So in this one, what have the judges said? We are in full agreement with the enunciation of law as regards 7 in Swastik Oil Industries. We therefore hold that the High Court was in error. So where is the judgment from Swastik, explanation from Swastik Industries? Yeah, here. I do not know because my page number are continuous. I'm on page 57, but it is the para, and this case doesn't seem to have paras. Para numbers are not there. So look at it if you can, where the judge is saying the High Court has dealt with the further amendment in the Swastik Oil Industries as follows, and it is enough if we extricate the same. Again in 74, pursuant to the recommendations of Law Commission, in the 47th report and the experience gained in the working of the Act by the ordinance, Section 7 of the Act was amended, whereby the words whether knowingly, intentionally, or otherwise were introduced by amending Act of 1967. They were deleted and the material part of Section 7(1) restored to its original frame, and a new provision of Section 10 was added, which reads as under. So what is the import of this whole thing? One thing we're realizing is that we have the Mehrhoff test, which said that you have to look at the object of the legislation and whether it be frustrated or facilitated. So that was found to be not satisfactory because some judges might be saying it is facilitated, some might be saying it is not facilitated. So then legislature brought in a very categorical statement saying that no, this has to be intentionally or otherwise or knowingly. So they were saying it was the benefit this was considered to be creating ambiguity. So even though this is categorically saying that mens rea is not required because it, when we say even it was whether knowingly, intentionally, or otherwise. So when you say whether they were taken intentionally or not, you're still liable. So very categorically, this phrase was saying that. And this was still suggested to be amended, and therefore we got the 10C1, which created a presumption. And presumption which said that now the accused has to, and the judge's time, they have to prove beyond reasonable doubt. So in this case, the prosecution, the defense has not been able to prove beyond reasonable doubt that they had no intention to export. We have already seen the clause 3 forbids not only export but also attempt to export. That's on the second issue. On the first issue, the judges have, by reference to the changes which have been introduced on the law, what have they said? Section 3, read with 7. Why have they said the magistrate was wrong? Since the prosecution had failed to prove mens rea on their part in transporting fertilizer bags from Madhya Pradesh to Maharashtra. So this was the reason given by the lower court, which the judges said this is an erroneous argument. We hold that High Court and the Magistrate Court were error in taking the view that because the prosecution has failed to prove beyond reasonable doubt, they said they were not required to prove beyond reasonable doubt. There was a presumption already. Therefore, this line of reasoning is a wrong reasoning. Then on the question of attempt, there are a statement which they talk about the 4 stages in commission of an offense. So suppose in this case, why it is an attempt and not the offense of exporting? Because they have still not crossed the border, but they are still proceeding there. So can we say there are, we will be reading the attempt, the offense of attempt in greater detail later on. Here we need only briefly want to understand the 4 stages. Sometimes the stage of attempt and preparation are the subject matter of contention. In this case also, the defense said they were only in the process of preparation and not attempt. So can you say, what will be the, suppose you are their defense and you want to take the plea that this was still a preparation and not the stage after. So preparation certainly, this clearer examples of preparation are that they have, and the judges have given in this case. Anyone who can give me an example from the case? What is an example of preparation?
Buying a pistol to murder someone.
Buying a pistol. The example here one is contacting the truck driver to export. So that is at the stage of preparation. When we start loading the fertilizer, is that a stage of preparation or is that a stage of attempt? Becomes dicey. They have started moving towards the border. In this case, they were 8 kilometers from the border. So will it make a difference whether they were 8 kilometers from the border when they were nabbed, or they were 10 kilometers only from the distance from where they started, from the point where they started? So whether at what point of time they're apprehended, these are used by the defense to say, no, we could have still changed our mind. So and one of the tests of attempt has been that if a person can still change their mind, they are at this stage of preparation and not attempt. So whether it is the last act, one is the last act, all those controversies are there, but the principle we learn, that the knowledge we gain about attempt in this case is that there are 4 stages. First stage is that I decide, I make up my mind to do something. So intention was that I desire to do it, and then I formally make a plan as to how I'm going to do it. So that is making, mentally I've prepared. Then I start doing the necessary things in order to commit that offense. So in this case, it will be procuring the fertilizer, or I already have it, then putting into bags, hiring a truck driver, having a contract with him, dealing with the person on the other end to receiving, the receiver for the thing. So all that is part of preparation. So when I start the journey with the goods, whether the attempt begins at that stage itself also, whether attempt is complete at the midway point, when it is closer to the border, because the moment border is passed, then it has crossed the stage of attempt. But it is a very contentious point among the lawyers to argue. If you are the defense counsel, you will want to hold till the very last moment, till the border, that no, he could have still changed his mind, he could have still returned, he could have still been stopped, he may not have been able to go, 1,000 things could have happened. So it was still at the preparation stage. So in this case, the judges said that no, they were just 8 kilometers from the border. So this is a case of attempt, and they should be held liable for attempt to export. So we look at in greater detail what are the various theories of attempt. One is said to be if you have done the last penultimate act. The other one says that if there is a social danger, there's much bigger social danger, then certain actions where the person is not even there. You wanted to kill somebody, you fired at the car he travels in, but he was not in the car. And therefore, you could not have killed him at all. So in such cases, sometimes the judges say, somebody has shot at a shadow, thinking this was the man there. So you will see judgments, sometimes they are saying it is attempt, it is not attempt. So they are applying different tests to determine, and different tests can lead to different consequences. At this point of time, it is enough for us to know that if an attempt has been made to commit an offense, it is punishable. So not only final commission of an offense is punishable, but an attempt to commit an offense is also punishable. The last, which is just of interest, which is not part of our criminal law understanding, because that goes into the area of criminology. In this judgment, the judges said, we will not give any punishment. When you look at punishment clauses, just for your knowledge purposes, there are different ways in which punishments have been prescribed. Most of the times, the judges, the provision says up to 10 years, up to 5 years, up to 3 months, up to 6 months, and fine or both. So there are different ways, but the punishment has been prescribed as a maximum which can the judge give for this offense. In case of murder, the mandatory minimum has always been that minimum you can give life imprisonment, maximum you can give death penalty. Then later trend has been, especially in offenses against women and especially of children and in case of rape, etc., the legislature has laid down that minimum you must give this and maximum you can give this. So there is a minimum also prescribed. In this case, there was no minimum prescribed. So judges usually, and in one of the rape cases even, a judge, when the mandatory minimum wasn't there, had imposed imprisonment till the rising of the court. Rising of the court means 4 or 4:30 the court rises, the court completes its proceedings for that day. So the convicted person was sent to imprisonment only for that period. The maximum was 7 in that kind of a case. Sometimes could have been 10 also. So here, when the maximum is provided, judges have full discretion about the minimum part of it. So in this case, they said, we do not require to give any punishment because such a long time has happened. And during that time, if nothing else has been happening, they have been leading a good life, then punishment doesn't serve any purpose. And also because it is still falling in the category of technical offense. It was not that they were not permitted to export the things, the fertilizer, but they could not have done that without the permission from the competent authority. So the judges do treat what we classify as the technical offenses differently than it is offenses against human body and property. So you will find, if you do a long-term wide study about punishment patterns, you will find those kind of instances, but this is only by the way that we are mentioning this. So yes, Shubham has written, it mentioned preparation attempt commission. So in this case, they were held liable for that. So do you have any questions now?
Ma'am, I have.
Yes, Shakib?
मैम इसमें डिफेंस के पास तो एडवांटेज होगा because 8 kilometer is a very long distance and we can the prosecution has to prove it beyond reasonable doubt. तो अगर मैम थोड़ा भी डाउट है कि they could have changed their mind तो मैम
नहीं, अगर अभी मुझे नहीं पता उज्जैन से और जहां वो जा रहे थे कितने किलोमीटर्स थे. So if they have done 300 kilometers already, they're unlikely not to go across 8 kilometers. No? What is the probability? But if suppose the total distance was 10 kilometers and they're still 8 kilometers away, one can still say maybe. But not if you have covered the most distance, you're almost on the border. And we have those kind of cases that in this 10 kilometers, they just say, no, attempt. If it's 60 kilometers, they just say that, no, maybe they could have changed their mind. So certainly, it's also a question of detailed facts, details, information available about the time, passage. When we will look at cases of attempt, we have a case where they were at the stage of unloading the silver from the truck on a very secluded place around the creek. And there was a sound of a yacht in the distance. So they said, no, this was still preparation. We have not started uploading this whole silver onto the yacht. Till that point of time, we are still at the stage of preparation. Judges did not agree with that. So it's always a question of detailed facts and also convincing the judge. You can always have a judge who agrees one way or the other, and the possibility of judges generally believing this is the truth. And we've seen this in our earlier cases, that the judge's understanding of the situation and of the law may differ. And it's on the persuasive capacity of the lawyer to convince the judge that what you are suggesting is the correct position by reference to facts and circumstances and the legal provisions and the interpretation. So you can do a Google search to find out what was the total distance between the two places which are mentioned in our case. And if they are caught at the border 8 kilometers, they certainly did not kind of succeed in convincing these judges to say, no, we were still at the stage of preparation. They did take that plea though. Judges did not agree with it.
Okay, ma'am.
Mark your attendance, please. The attendance is of many people, but I can see very few. How come? So what's the schedule for tomorrow?
Ma'am, 2:55 class.
No, what are we supposed to be talking about?
IPC introduction
We have
definitions.
IPC introduction. So have a quick look at our IPC, and I would suggest look at the first couple of sections and also apprise yourself how many chapters we have, what are the headings of those chapters. We want to understand where does it apply, what is the extent of application, and some of the key definitions we want to look at. The definition of man, woman, gender, act, singular, plural, that all that we have seen. But some other definitions we will look at, because that is the meaning which will be applied in all cases. Just get familiar with the basic structure of the IPC. That's what we want to look at tomorrow. We look at definition of voluntarily, dishonestly, reason to believe, good faith. All those words we have looked at quickly, we'll revise them. Okay?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Balram Singh ji, P is
Thank you,
sufficient.
ma'am.
You don't have
Thank
to
you, ma'am.
write whole present. No, there's anything wrong with it. This is it's okay. Okay, let's stop recording.